my name is Paulina Refutation. I'm responding to the claim that the death penalty has significant drawbacks as a form of punishment. So my opponent had 4 secondary claims. They are as follows. 1, the most common form of the death penalty, the lethal injection, violates the 8th Amendment. 2, the death penalty is increasingly being abolished by state governments as a result of low public support. 3, the possibility of irrevocable mistakes exists with the use of the death penalty. And 4, the death penalty is a costly procedure. Okay, so starting with my responses to Claim 1. Claim 1 was that the most common form of the death penalty, the lethal injection, violates the 8th Amendment. So according to civilrights.com, in 1848, the Supreme Court noted that cruel and unusual punishment included drawing and quartering, emboweling alive, beheading, public dissecting, and burning alive. So although this is very outdated, it was from 1848, still to this day, technically and legally, no form of the death penalty has been said to be violating the 8th Amendment of cruel and unusual punishment. My opponent stated that Duhame's Law Dictionary defines cruel and unusual punishment as unnecessary. And he used that word unnecessary, but necessity is circumstantial, especially when dealing with a capital offense. So if someone is a murderer, does that make particular punishments unnecessary? And my position would be that no, it does not. So according to Scientific American in 2008, the Supreme Court upheld a ruling that the 3-drug method of lethal injection did not constitute cruel and unusual punishment. Therefore, his first claim that the death penalty is unconstitutional does not stand. So, Claim 2, the death penalty is increasingly being abolished by state government as a result of low public support. My opponent states that the death penalty is increasingly being abolished by state governments and says that since 2000, 7 states have abolished the use of the death penalty. The majority of the U.S. still does use the death penalty according to deathpenaltyinfo.org, with 31 states currently using it. So that's a good majority of the United States that still do use the death penalty. And as I stated, my opponent said that in the past 16 years, 7 states have abolished the use of the death penalty. These states are not presented to us, however, that is less than 1 state every 2 years. So far, the majority of states have supported it, and it looks like it's going to stay that way. In response to Claim 3, which is the possibility of irrevocable mistakes exists with the use of the death penalty, the opponent made the point that with a study by Columbia Law School, 2/3 of capital trials had errors, and when retried, over 80% were not sentenced to death. This shows, though, that a significant percent were not mistakenly executed, which for his case would be a good thing. The problem would lie if they were mistakenly being executed. He also mentions that only 7% were acquitted meaning that they were completely uncharged from the offense. So this signifies that the other 93% were still charged and were still guilty. The opponent's third claim states that there is a possibility of mistakes with the use of the death penalty. However, his secondary claims only mention sentencing, not the actual execution. And according to an article from Forbes called "How Many Innocent People Are Sentenced to Death?", the answer to that question is only 4% of innocent people are actually killed when they are innocent. And the last claim, the death penalty is a costly procedure. So although there is sufficient evidence from my opponent that the death penalty is costly, it brings more to the innocent than money is worth. So cost is only a number compared to justice for the other side of the case. The abolition of the death penalty is fighting for the justice of the murderer, not for the justice of the victim or the victims. The death penalty brings closure to families that have experienced true horror. So if a family lost a loved one to someone that killed them, it brings them closure, which I think is worth more than the cost that it is. Thank you.
All right, at the beginning, the claims labeled, you lay out the secondary issues pretty clearly. The signpost on the first point is about the issue of cruel and unusual. You've got kind of a definitional criteria that was established by the court back, 160 years ago plus. And then you've got a contemporary ruling on the 3-drug method. So I think you've got a pretty good answer on that particular point. On the second point, you can't deny something that is true. The question is that really a trend? Does it show that there's a lack of support? I think you could probably present a couple of counterexamples here. For instance, California was offered the opportunity to get rid of the death penalty a couple of years ago, and they confirmed that they wanted to continue to have the death penalty. I think that would be a good illustration of that. Where are you? I know you're there. There you are. Of that particular point. I don't know how important that issue is in one way or the other. If people decide to get rid of the death penalty, that's fine. If they decide they want to keep it, that's fine. But does that make it a drawback in any way? I don't know why that point is relevant to the main proposition. I think that's a point that's missing in the argument here. On the issue of mistakes, you know what? I think that you did a pretty good job on the first part of this argument, suggesting that, look, this is only talking about procedural issues, and that 93% still get convicted, so we're not really convicting people. There's no difference in the substantial number of people who are innocent people who are getting into some kind of problem. And then you turn around and you present a piece of evidence that quantifies the number of people who are innocent that are likely to be executed. Probably only 4% of the people we've executed are innocent. That's better evidence than the advocate had on this particular argument. I don't know that really helps you much. I think that undermines your argument a little bit. And then I think there's a good counter argument to be made on the fourth point, but it needs to be developed a little bit more, and it sounds almost like a value argument. I think there are probably some ways to develop it as an issue of fact. All right, thanks.